by the Climate Change Committee, a club based in Massachusetts dedicated to spreading awareness about climate change. You can find our interviews on our YouTube channel or on any podcast platform.
I'm Sugita.
And I'm Vanessa.
And we are today's hosts.
Today we are meeting with Katie Durkin Cook, Stewardship and Education Manager of the Lowell Parks Conservation Trust.
She uses her leadership position to educate students and her community on the importance of nature and leads numerous programs, conferences, and even volunteer opportunities in Lowell.
Hi, everyone. As they said before, my name is Katie Durkin Cook, and I'm really excited to be here today. I work for the Lowell Parks Conservation Trust, a nonprofit membership-based organization in Lowell, and we protect the open spaces and help better the open spaces in Lowell.
What do you like to do in your daily life to help fight climate change?
Yes. So aside from, the classic answer of recycling, trying to save water when I can, and I used to at my old house, I have composting. I have yet to start my compost bin in my new apartment since I got married. But yeah, just reducing as much waste as possible. And then the other thing that I do daily, which is a really fun part of my job, is helping to educate the next generation of land stewards by mentoring them. And through this process, they also educate me. So
what exactly is a land steward for those who don't know?
Yeah, great question. So a land steward is kind of like the eyes and ears on our properties when we can't make it out there. So we have over 30 acres of conservation land and lands that we help protect in Lowell alone. And there's only 2 full-time staff members at LP and CT. It's myself and my executive director, Jane Calvin. And we can't cover all the properties. We can't know what's going on out there. So we have volunteers called land stewards, and they will walk the properties on their own time and make weekly reports or however often they visit and let us know what's going on out there. Sometimes they'll even do trash cleanups and light landscaping work or trail maintenance. And some of them even get a little creative and do some photography and nature journaling out there as well.
Since your work is very orientated towards your local community, how do you get input from the public?
Yeah, another great question. So some of the main ways that we do it is through all of our events and volunteer work and even our environmental education programs. We encourage the use and respect for the natural spaces in the community. Our mission is to create community through conservation. And we do that by focusing on community relevance to these places. So for example, all of our events are in programming is done with the community interests in mind. So we know that we have a lot of folks that really enjoy bird watching. And so we lead a bird walking event along one of our properties. We also understand that people like to explore new places. And so we have some long walks where we explore conservation land and do some wildlife tracking. Those are just a couple of examples.
What would you like more people in your community to know about climate change and about how to counteract climate change, whether that means enrolling in one of your programs or not?
One of the things that I'd really like the community to remember when thinking about climate change and just know in general, which I think a lot of them are beginning to do so even more. But I like to emphasize the fact that we are all connected, right? So everybody lives in a watershed. And so for those of you that don't know, a watershed is a common area where the water drains to a specific body of water. I said water a lot there, but it is just an area where it all the water accumulates to a certain point. So we live in Lowell, and let's say that the city of Lowell makes some really awesome changes so that the rivers are less polluted in the area. There's more ability to do recreation on these rivers, like fishing, kayaking, and whitewater rafting, which we all do. And if we make those changes, if people upstream from us and other towns throughout our watershed are still polluting those rivers and they're causing damage to those rivers, that's going to trickle down to us. So just remembering that our actions have a domino effect, and that affects climate change as a whole. So um, that's one part that I really like to emphasize.
But what are some easy things that we as students can do to help fight climate change?
In my opinion, the most powerful tool that youth especially can use is their voice. Um, if you remain educated, just as you are doing now by having this podcast and interviewing me and other professionals, um, if you maintain that education and if you disagree on things that are happening, then you can speak out. And if you look back in history, the most dramatic changes throughout history start from people speaking out. So use your voice, find out what current bills are in the process, and other policies. And if you disagree, write a letter, make some phone calls, get a group together, because there are bound to be people that have the same ideas as you do, or you can bring something new to the table.
I guess we're a little bit curious about how all of that works and how your students step up to fight climate change, whether creating conferences or the younger ones just spending time in nature and getting to feel that connection you were talking about earlier.
There's a lot of different ways that I see students stepping up to fight climate change. We, through Lowell Parks and Conservation Trust, we have an excellent environmental education program in Lowell Public Schools. We're in 10 Lowell Public Schools, and we do programming in partnership with Mass Audubon Drumlin Farm. And through this partnership that we have cultivated, we have been able to reach kindergartners through college age students. And that range of advocacy and fighting for a healthier planet looks different depending on the age, but it's all with the same core message.
So we were wondering what the statewide student-led conferences are like.
The one that we run is, I say we, I mean the youth. It's a youth-led conference. So the Trees group, primarily in partnership with the Compass group, they run the Environmental Youth Conference, and this will be their 5th year doing it. There was a little bit of a hiccup last year with COVID, and it was actually 2 days before our conference when the governor shut things down. But they kind of applied this year's to a virtual format. In the past, we've had a lot of hands-on activities at the conference. The students led games and had a career panel of a variety of professionals, both local and statewide, in a variety of environmental careers. And then there was kind of a question and answer session. You can mingle and network with these folks. And then after that, we'd have a lunch, and the lunch was all the remaining parts of the lunch and the trash was then composted from a local composting agency. And then after that, they transitioned into what they call the table talks. And that is a variety of stations that educate about certain critical, informative things about climate change.
We're kind of curious, what are some of those unique experiences you've had?
One of my favorite stories is, of course, my role is to help inspire awe and wonder at the natural world and help foster those connections. So I've had students that have told me about their favorite spots in Lowell to visit, and sharing how they connect with friends here, especially during the pandemic. And it turned out that one of those parks was one of our conservation properties. So that was pretty neat.
But could you explain more about the importance of these programs and the fact that they're open to all ages?
To be called a student, you don't have to be a young child. Like, the programs that we offer are for all ages. And so they could be adult students, and they could have these realizations for the first time in their adult life and realize that it's okay to get messy. It's okay to lift up logs and look for slugs and worms, or play in the dirt. And it's just encouraging that curiosity in all ages. I think that's really one of the important things about our programming. And also that some of these people, they live in an urban community. Lowell is a diverse community, collectively speaks 67 languages. It's also a low income community. So just providing that connection, that nature connects all of us, and it's a place where it's really important to make sure access to these open spaces are available for everyone.
What's one of your favorite or most fun activities that you've had in these programs, whether it's fun for younger children who probably need the more fun, appealing activities, or just some fun activities like candle making that you've had with the older kids?
So a fun activity that we lead, it's through a Beatles program, which is an acronym. And I'm actually not even, I'm blanking on what that stands for, but it goes off of the process of asking the students what they notice, what they wonder, and what it reminds them of. And it's so much fun because it's different for everyone. I mean, even just a group of third graders and having them notice, they all notice something different, even if they're all looking at the same thing. And it reminds them of something different through what it reminds them of and what they wonder, it can further the discussion. So it unlocks an opportunity to us to have more teachable moments because based off of what they're curious of, we can help further that connection. And if they're if it's reminding them of something, then we get a good background on their experience in nature and how we can improve that. So that's one of my favorite activities.
I'm just wondering how COVID has affected these programs and the role in the trust as a whole. I mean, I'm sure there's positives, but mostly negatives. So could you tell us some of the effects that's happened?
It really just allowed us to get more creative. Um, Part of my major was a creative major. I actually designed my own major at UMass Amherst. There's a program there called BDIC, or Bachelor's Degree in Individual Concentration. So it just allowed us to think differently and helped us grow as an organization by changing this mindset and switching things virtually. It helped us increase our educational video library and our online and at home education resources.
What made you want to teach about nature and made you want to take this role that's so dependent on nature and green spaces, whether it's your childhood or high school education, college? What was it that inspired you?
The major that I created myself at UMass Amherst is an individual concentration. And what that means is I was able to petition to the dean and create my own bachelor's degree by pulling and combining a variety of majors together. So I pulled from the journalism department, the photography and the multimedia department, and the animal behavior and sciences, as well as the environmental studies portion of it. So with all of that together, I kind of created wildlife multimedia journalism. And the entire goal of that concentration was to continue a life of lifelong learning and discovery of our worlds because there's so much to learn out there. But then use those skills and my skills of multimedia to further educate the world about it. So these things are awesome to me, but I want to make them awesome for everyone and inspire them to help protect our planet.
So, what is your favorite green space in Lowell and why?
Okay, this is a tough question. Um, I have a couple favorites, but I narrowed it down to my top one. I think there's a property called West Meadow Conservation Land in Lowell, and it is a forest property right next to wetlands. And there's also a stream and walking trails that connect to the Lowell Drake-Tingsboro State Forest. So it's this total escape in the middle of Lowell. It's in Pawtucketville. And some of the things that I've seen there, we have a wildlife camera there, and there's fox and coyote and raccoon family that frequently visits us, which is pretty neat. And there's also turtles nesting there, and what we're trying to get certified as a vernal pool, which has some frogs and macroinvertebrates and other fun stuff. So it has a variety of habitats. It has like a sandy area, some really neat ferns, and we also have a Harvard forest phenology plot there that our high school students help monitor. And we're studying the phenology of trees in a 10 by 10 plot for Harvard.
Thinking of, the goodness in ordinary stuff or in everyday things, what's something you look forward to in your job every single day?
Okay, I love that every single day there's a new opportunity to connect someone to these like wild wonders that are in Lowell every day. Because when you think of Lowell, you wouldn't think of it as having a lot of wildlife, but actually there's a lot of often overlooked wildlife in Lowell. And every single day I have the opportunity to open someone's eyes to this. I also help people experience something that hopefully will inspire them to protect these special places in the future too. So that's really neat.
So, what are some of the positive changes you have seen in your community after these programs were initiated?
Just while being here in this short amount of time, I can share some of the changes that I've seen. So I've seen really shy students come out of their shell and speak at national conferences. I have seen some of those students that I've been with since they were, freshmen. They are now in environmental careers in colleges. Um, let's see, I've seen the expansion of trails throughout the Lowell community. So right now, there's a construction project going on at the Concord River Greenway that will connect some trails to each other. So I'm excited about that.
What volunteering activity do you recommend for different ages?
A couple things that I think are the most rewarding for any age to get involved with is stewarding a property. So there's something that we have that is called a land steward. And what they will do is we have a monitoring form online, and the land steward is basically our eyes and ears in the property when we can't get out there. We are only a two full-time staffed organization and a couple part-time staff. So we love our volunteer help, and it also helps benefit them by connecting to the community as well. But these land stewards will go out and they'll walk the properties. They'll make note of any changes that they see, if there's any trash overflowing or dumping. And they also note the wildlife and the people that are using the properties, and they'll suggest changes. And of course, we do group cleanup. So if there's a group of students in a club, a sports team, a sorority, a fraternity, even just a group of friends that see a property in Lowell, it doesn't have to be specific conservation land, but if you want to organize a cleanup, we can help get you started doing that.
So do you think that COVID has affected people's appreciation for the environment more and their involvement for their local parks and green spaces?
I think that COVID has provided people with a sanctuary during these difficult times, because when everything was shut down and people were really fearful, nature remained. Nature wasn't shut down, and it actually thrived at some parts of the world where there was that pause button from human impact. So I think with everything going on in COVID, people have really use nature as their sanctuary. We encourage people to get out and do some mindfulness or mindful walking, and I think that appreciation grew during COVID, that people had this place to escape to.
What are your ultimate goals with all of these different stewardship programs, volunteering programs, and even environmental education programs?
The Lowell Parks and Conservation Trust, our like core mission is to create community through conservation. So we really want to build community relevance to the programming and events that we offer. Another thing with the environmental education programs that we run, we want to inspire awe and hope for the next generation of land stewards. So by starting this programming young and the conversation about climate change in kindergarten, something that regular school curriculum probably won't cover for a bit at least. That helps open their eyes and start the conversation early, so they're more in tune with nature and a human impact.
That's a wonderful message of, community and resonating with both nature and people. Um, and that's the end of our interview portion of the podcast. If you have any final comments, or if you want to talk about some of the websites or resources for your programs, or even different social medias your programs have, now is
Yeah, definitely. So our website is lowelllandtrust.org. It looks kind of funny because there's 3 L's in a row. And there you'll find all of the opportunities to get involved. So there's a whole separate tab dedicated to getting involved. We are on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And we also have a live stream camera for our baby turtles that can be found on our website as well. So that's lots of fun. I hope that those of you listening can check out our website and find a way that to get involved that excites you. Thank you so much for having me. This has been a lot of fun. And I really appreciate you taking the time to interview so many awesome, awesome candidates. So thank you.